Do you know where the world's most popular sport actually came from? England? China? Or from a place where if you lost, you didn't just lose a trophy, you could lose your head? Today, we'll tell that story. A story that is 3,000 years old, a story you've never heard told this way before. 3 questions. First, a game called football started in England. But that game had no specific field, no fixed number of players. There weren't even any boundaries. The entire town was the field. And people even died. Second, more than 2,000 years ago, China had a game that looked exactly like modern football. It had goalposts, it had a ball, it had rules. But modern football did not come from that game. Why? Third, the Maya civilization had a ball game where losing could mean getting your head cut off. The ball for that game was made from human skulls. Does that game have any connection to today's football? As we answer these 3 questions, we'll tell the complete story of football's birth. Welcome. Today's video is about a game, but it's not just the history of a game. It's the history of humanity, because football, or soccer, however you call it, is one of the deepest expressions of human instinct. Being together, competing, finding joy. Today, more than 265 million people play football. 3.5 billion people consider themselves football fans. That's more than half of the world's population. But where did this enormous sport come from? In today's video, we'll take that journey from more than 3,000 years ago all the way to the modern World Cup. And at every step, you'll learn something that will surprise you. 3,500 years ago. Mesoamerica, in the lands that are now Mexico, Guatemala, and Belize, covered today by dense jungles, there once existed one of the most mysterious civilizations in the world, the Olmec civilization. These people who created one of the world's first major civilizations did something unusual. They made balls from the sap of rubber trees. Think about it, 3,500 years ago. No plastic, no synthetic materials. Yet they discovered rubber trees in the jungle. They collected the sap and they used it to create a ball that bounced when it hit the ground. It was the first bouncing ball in human history. And they played games with it. Yale University professor Mary Miller said, "The idea of the team sport was invented in Mesoamerica." In other words, the concept of team sports began here. But this game had a terrifying rule. In Maya civilization, this game was part of religious ceremonies. The game was played on a special court. On both sides of the field were stone rings, similar to today's basketball hoops. The ball had to pass through those rings. Hands were not allowed. Only the hips could be used. And if you lost, right there on that very ball court, the captain of the losing team could be sacrificed. More than 1,500 of these ball courts have been discovered throughout Mesoamerica. Similar ceremonies took place in all of them, but this game is not the direct ancestor of modern football, because the ball wasn't kicked, it was struck with the hips. So where did the idea of kicking a ball come from? 206 pece, Dynasty, China. More than 2,200 years ago, a new training exercise was introduced in the military of the Han Dynasty. Its name was Cuju. In Chinese, Q means kick, Ju means ball. Cuju means kicking a ball. In this game, soldiers kicked a leather ball filled with feathers or fur inside. The goal was to send the ball through an opening in a designated target area. That sounds exactly like football, doesn't it? But this game had one remarkable feature. Hands were not allowed, only feet. FIFA itself has acknowledged that Cuju is the first documented kicking game in human history. But the Chinese emperors took the game even further. Eventually, Cuju had goalposts. Bamboo poles stood on both sides, with silk netting stretched between them, very much like modern goalposts. The number of players became fixed, 6 players on each team. Referees were introduced. Rules for fouls were introduced. In other words, 2,000 years ago, China had a game that looked almost exactly like modern football. So why didn't modern football come from China? This is where the biggest mystery begins. Cuju spread, it reached Japan, where it became known as Kemari. But Kemari had no competitive element. It was a ceremonial game where participants worked together to keep the ball in the air. And gradually, China's Cuju faded away. After the Mongol invasions, the game declined. It was never revived in the same way again. Meanwhile, in Europe, a very different kind of game was spreading. 12th century, England. AT. In medieval England, there was a game that had no rules, no field boundaries, no fixed number of players. 18, Taito, all the men from one village on one side, all the men from the neighboring village on the other side. 2, in the middle was a ball made by inflating a pig's bladder. 2, the goal, take the ball to a specific place in the opponent's village. 2, Gate, how big was the field? As much land as existed between the two villages, everything. IEM, meaning the entire town was the field. 18, this game was called mob football. .at, mob meaning crowd, because hundreds of people played together. 18, and how violent was this game? 18, people died. 8, yes. People died on the playing field, bones were broken, even stabbings happened. 2, the game was so dangerous that the kings of England repeatedly banned it. In 1314, King Edward II said, "Stop this game. Anyone who plays will go to prison." .kime, RIT, but people did not stop. 2, in 1365, King Edward III banned it again. The reason? Soldiers were not practicing archery because they were spending time playing football. 18. In 1424, Scotland's King James, I said, "No man play at the football." Till still, people continued playing. Because this game belonged to ordinary people on streets and fields, in the squares in front of churches. 2, but how did modern football come from this chaos? 2, FAT. For that, we need to go to 19th century England. 1800, England. TA, England's elite public schools. Eton, Rugby, Harrow, Winchester were the most influential educational institutions of that time. .com, the sons of Britain's richest and most powerful families studied there. ET, and every school had a game similar to football, but every school had its own different rules. Tane, at Eton, the ball could only be kicked. It could not be picked up with hands. 10, at rugby, players could pick up the ball with their hands and run. ATVs, 2 different school games, later created 2 different sports. .a, 2TA free. From Eton's dribbling game came association football, the game we call soccer. 2AT, from rugby's running game came rugby football, which later led to American football. .air, but the problem was the rules were so different between schools that one team couldn't even play against another team. Now, imagine you enter a game against a team whose rules you don't even know. 10, that's not a sport, that's chaos. 8, to find a solution, a meeting was held at Cambridge University in 1848. Representatives from different schools came together, they tried to create one set of rules, NT-IPA, but they were not completely successful. 2, then came the historic day. IT, LD26 October 1863, London. 2, night was falling. Freemasons Tavern, a famous pub on Great Queen Street. 2, representatives from 12 football clubs sat around a table. There was only one question in front of them: what should the rules of football be? 2, the biggest debate in the meeting was about one thing. 10, hacking. TA, meaning kicking an opponent's legs. .kime, the Blackheath Club representative F.W. Campbell said, "Hacking is the true football," meaning without kicking opponents, it was not real football. 2, but the others disagreed. 2, in the vote, Campbell lost. Tyne, TD hacking was banned. 2, tacked angry. Campbell left the meeting with his club. 18, true F. And the others came together to create the Football Association. In short, FA. Tain, on 8 December 1863, FA published the Laws of Football, the first complete set of football rules. The rules said 18, the ball cannot be carried with hands. Only feet can be used. At, quote, with this one decision, modern football was born. 2 are T. But here's an interesting fact. T, the word that is still debated around the world today, soccer versus football. Where did the word soccer come from? AT, it came from the short form of association football. ACO, Oxford University students, called association ASOC. To AT, from there came the word soccer. A10, meaning soccer is not an American word. It is British. It was created in England. Later, England stopped using the word. .at and America kept it. AT. That's why today in the UK it is football, and in the USA it is soccer. ATT in 1863 FA was created, but football was still only England's game. NIT TAS. So how did it spread across the entire world? To the answer, the British Empire. AD in. In the 1800s, Britain had the largest empire in the world. India, Africa, South America, British soldiers, businessmen, and workers traveled everywhere. 18, and wherever they went, they took football with them. 18, in 1867, the first football match happened in Argentina. Who played it? British workers. A2, in 1882, the first football club was created in India. In 1895, football arrived in Brazil. 10, but these countries did not just accept the game, they made it their own. In Brazil, football became Jogo Bonito, the beautiful game. Their dancing, style, dribbling, and creativity made it completely different from England. W, in Argentina, it became La Nuestra, 21 May 1904, Paris. Representatives from 7 countries, France, Belgium, Denmark, Netherlands, Spain, Sweden, and Switzerland, sat together in a room. They decided that football needed an international organization. That day, FIFA Fédération Internationale de Football Association was born. Interesting fact, England was not present at this meeting because England believed they were the inventors of the game. They did not need to be under any international organization. They joined the following year. But throughout history, England has left FIFA and returned at different times. In 1930, the first World Cup took place in Uruguay. Do you know how small the beginning was? Only 13 teams participated because many European teams did not want to make the long sea journey to South America. Uruguay won. They became the first world champions on their own soil. But the beginning was so small that nobody could imagine 96 years later, in 2026, the same World Cup would be watched by 3.5 billion people. A story within another story, the history of the football. In Mesoamerica, a rubber ball. In China, a leather ball filled with feathers or fur. In medieval England, a pig's bladder. Yes, really. A ball was made by inflating a pig's bladder. It was the easiest material available. In the 1850s, Charles Goodyear, who discovered rubber vulcanization, created the first rubber football. It was a revolution. In 1888, the first professional football league started in England. At that time, balls were made from leather, but leather balls had a problem. They became heavy when wet in the rain. If they hit someone's head, there was a chance of injury. In 1970, Adidas created the iconic black and white ball Telstar. It was first used in the Mexico World Cup. The colors were chosen because the design looked better on television. Today's football is made with 12 pentagon and 20 hexagon panels. Inside, there is synthetic material. It is perfectly round. In 3,500 years, from pieces of rubber to today's high-tech ball. This journey is the journey of football. One question remains. There are many sports in the world. Cricket, basketball, tennis, baseball. But why did football become the #1 sport in the world? The answer is simple. To play football, you only need one thing: a ball, cricket, needs a bat, wickets, and a specially prepared pitch. Basketball needs a backboard, hoop, and a flat surface. Tennis needs a racket, net, and court. But football, in the streets of Brazil, Pelé played by making a ball from a sock. On the dirt roads of Africa, children create goalposts with stones and play. In Asian villages, people play barefoot with bamboo boundaries. This accessibility, this simplicity, has taken football to every country and every class of people in rich countries, in poor countries, in deserts, in snow, on mountains, by the sea. Wherever there are people, there is football. 3,500 years ago, the Olmecs took rubber from the jungle and created a ball. 2,200 years ago, Chinese soldiers kicked a leather ball as part of military training. 800 years ago, people in English villages kicked pig bladders and turned it into a celebration. 163 years ago, 12 clubs sat inside a London pub and created the rules of football. And today, in 202648 countries across 3 nations are fighting for one trophy. That same ball, that same joy, that same passion. Humans changed over thousands of years. Technology changed. Countries changed. But the joy of kicking a ball never changed. And that proves football is not just a sport. Football is humanity's oldest, simplest, and most universal language. But I want to leave you with one question. If that one vote in 1863 had gone differently, if hacking had been allowed, what would football look like today? Maybe another sport would be the most popular game in the world. Maybe nobody would know the names Messi and Ronaldo. Maybe there would be no World Cup. One decision in one room, and that decision changed the history of the world. Write in the comments, do you think football will survive for another 1,000 years? Subscribe. Click the bell icon. See you in the next video.